The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ask for Candy, where we talk about healing, self-care, love, sex, relationships, and what it takes to be amazing on the daily. Who I am Candace Harper, lovecoach.com, and my purpose with this podcast is to create healthy, romantic relationships all around the world, especially now that there is a worldwide health crisis and people are in need of love and connection now more than ever. But before we get into that, I just want to give a shout out to all the Armed Radio people who are listening in all around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to Ask for Candy on Anchor. Also subscribe to us on YouTube, Ask for Candy Podcast. And when you subscribe, even if you're busy on a Thursday night, you'll never miss a show. We are here to support you through love and connection during this global health crisis and beyond. Also, we are on Patreon, so if you want to become a patron on the show, just click the link in our post description, become a patron, and get access to early content, first dibs on any of our perks, offers, or giveaways, and 30% off any private coaching package should you be interested. You can also email us, askforcandypodcast@gmail.com, if you have any questions during the broadcast, or if you just have things that you want to talk about, things you want to suggest, anything. If you're shy, you just want to let us know how you're feeling, we love to get emails, so you can always email us. I am a relationship coach, a workshop facilitator, and a professional matchmaker with Talkify. And if you've never heard of it, it's an amazing digital service where you can hire a matchmaker to do all the sifting and the vetting on your behalf. And it's especially great for people who struggle with initiating contact or simply picking the right partner. Matchmaking and relationship coaching is my zone of genius. And the best part about it is that week to week, I get to grow and learn as I interact with people around the most intimate parts of their lives. And I get to meet and nurture new clients. I get to screen possible dating candidates for them. I get to design programs and activities that deepen their ability to get to know each other. And most importantly, I get to be part of what supports healthy beginnings and a sustainably healthy relationship. And I would hazard a guess that some of you who are at home quarantined with someone right now and wondering if things would have turned out differently if you had initially had someone there to help you choose in the beginning might be thinking, oh, this matchmaking thing might have something to it. The good news, though, is that it's never too late to turn the ship around if both people are willing and able. And so with that thinking, I have a really special guest today whose actual zone of genius and job it is to take care of people who are willing and able to turn the ship around. So I'm privileged to interview a colleague of mine who is a licensed family therapist and deals with relationship problems and solutions every day in her own practice. Jelisha Gatling is a licensed marriage and family therapist in New York City. In her practice, Let's Unpack Therapy, she works with couples, helping them to unpack the baggage that gets in between their relationship. Her work focuses on helping couples to get unstuck, reconnect, and heal from betrayal and infidelity. She also supports individuals in navigating relationship dilemmas and is currently providing video therapy in light of the pandemic. When she's not with clients, she is presenting workshops and self-care and healthy relationships and guest blogging. Welcome, Jelisha. Yay!
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Candace.
Hi, honey.
I'm happy to be here.
Right. I'm so happy you're here, too. I feel like I've been wanting you as a guest forever, for one thing. And I was so happy when you reached out to me and you were like, hey, I'm ready. I was like, yes.
Yeah, our timing was it was off. It seemed like our availability just wouldn't sync up. But I'm an avid listener of the podcast, and I'm super pumped to be here. You don't even know.
I love you for that. That's awesome. So when you did reach out to me and you were talking about this phrase that you used, financial trauma, I was just so instantly Like, it resonated. I was fascinated. It was something that I knew that I needed to be in a conversation around, and I knew that you would have some nuggets and some things to touch on around it, and that it's something that a lot of people are dealing with right now. And I just want us to I want us to talk about it and lay it out, unpack it, as you like to say, and just really get into what it's all about. So the title for you guys that are listening tonight is How Financial Trauma Affects Relationships, the narratives that we tie to money and the effects they have on our ability to have healthy romantic relationships in or out of a pandemic.
Yeah. And I mean, Candace, the reason I wanted to talk about this topic specifically, it sort of, it originated from just noticing that working with so many couples and clients of mine, that money is, it's an emotional, sticky, anxiety-ridden topic. Like, the word alone brings up so much for so many people. And really being able to dig deeper to people's stories and how they came to develop their relationship with money, I really became fascinated with the concept of financial trauma, which I hadn't heard of before a few years ago. And so essentially financial trauma is when someone is experiencing pervasive dysfunctional reactions, similar to PTSD, really, in response to long-standing financial stress. It can also be in response to a single event. It can be something that happened in your childhood that really left a mark with you around money and what it means. And it can continue to really inform how you interact with money, how you relate to money, if you avoid it, talk about it, or don't. It's really, really complex and really layered, but it's something that a lot of people deal with, and I think they experience it sort of as just the norm. Like, this is just what it is. And it's not looked at as an issue or something that can be changed into a more positive experience.
Now, let me ask you this. Is there a distinction between... because I'm thinking about, like, even my own situation growing up, like what was modeled for me as far as money is concerned. Like, let's say with my mother was just a chronic spender. Like, money could not stay in her pocket for anything. Right. And so is there a distinction between that conditioning of seeing somebody repeat an unworkable pattern over and over again compared to actually having, like, when I think of trauma, I think of something that is not a one-time thing, but something that has a bigger sort of impact at once, or a bigger sort of impact each time it happens. Is there a distinction between those two things, like conditioning or trauma over and over again?
There definitely is. And of course, we tend to model habits and behaviors of our parents or caregivers. So that definitely is something different from trauma, where there may have been an experience such as your father or mother losing their business, having bankruptcy, and you going from maybe being very comfortable or even affluent to not being, and having to cope with a change in maybe where you live, your school, your peers. I mean, there's so many losses that can come from a change in your income, and that's traumatic in itself. There's so many different layers of trauma. And so how that can impact you moving forward, even 10, 20 years later into adulthood, is that you may have this fear of losing what you have. And that may come out in ways of being really, really frugal, even when you are really sufficiently doing okay. Or you may hoard money. I mean, there's so many different money disorders that might come from the same experience. And really, it's really about teasing out what stories or takeaways you took from that particular event or loss or set of losses.
So how do you, if you're someone, and I definitely feel like I'm someone who had a combination of both, the unworkable conditioning and, traumas around it. So, I'm trying to think of good examples. And with the financial trauma, is it something that you can cause for yourself? Like, let's say I can't think of one specifically as far as my parents are concerned that I knew had to do with money, because they never really talked about money too much with us. But there is a financial trauma that I had in college that I brought on myself.
The trauma is not necessarily the event or something that you bring or don't bring to yourself. It's more the impact of it.
Gotcha.
So,
I see. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And, there can be trauma from, let's say, even just not being taught about money, or that money not being talked about. Yeah. And, a lot of kids, especially in college, you're getting those credit card offers like all the time, right?
Yes.
And so in those circumstances, if you haven't been already working out that muscle of budgeting and knowing what's going on with your money, and you're not just like kind of swiping in the moment or whatever, you may find yourself in a bunch of debt or not being able to pay bills when you're on your own. Yeah. And you find yourself in this hole, and that in itself can be traumatic because of the ramifications of it, but also you feel guilty. I mean, there's so many people that have so much guilt around money and that beat themselves up for choices that they made when they were working with the tools that they had.
Totally.
You know what you know. And so that has been a huge piece that I've worked with clients on in terms of letting go of that and working to really release that guilt and really stepping back into what they knew then. Okay, now what do you know now, and what do you need to know? And let's seek out resources to help you to better manage.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. What is coming up for me around what you're saying is that, what I did in college as far as the mistakes, well, I hate to call them mistakes, but, the things that I did out of not knowing at that time had me most of my adult life, with a huge amount of student loan debt. And, I never let it default, but I did let it sort of grow and hang over my head. And it actually stopped me from committing in a lot of relationships over my adulthood because I felt guilty, like you were talking about. I felt guilty about the prospect of bringing someone else my debt.
Yeah, that's a common story for sure. But see, that just goes to show how deep, how far, how many contexts this can impact your life. Yeah. It's not just about budgeting. It's not about strategy. I mean, that's important. But I think people get caught up in, well, if I, knew how to better manage money. I mean, there are a million books out there. We could do that. Yeah. I'm talking about the emotional side of it. Yeah. Money is emotional. And so, that's the part that's really difficult to unpack. And it really starts with starting to kind of identify, how have you related to money? Like, when you spend, are you spending to celebrate? Do you tend to spend when you feel sad, when you feel lonely? Do you, is it a coping mechanism, or is it something that you treat yourself to? Like, there's so many different ways that we relate to spending, to saving, and teasing out those stories can be so insightful. Yeah. And those are the things that you really want to try to unpack and better understand, so you can rewrite the ones that are not working for you.
Yeah. So what would you say? So if I'm someone who because I think a lot of times the general thought is, I just need more of it. I just need more. If I had more money, right? So what would you say is a way to sort of start down that self-examination journey? Like, what do you think are maybe some signs that you're going through financial trauma? Because I think most of the time people just immediately say it's just because I don't have enough. But what are some other indications that you feel like are like, that is where your answer is?
Yeah. So, I mean, some signs might be if you just in general have a negative connotation or feeling around money in general. Really catching. I mean, if you're journaling, if you are in therapy, even just really listening for thought patterns that come up that are reoccurring, like what you just said, there's never enough, or if money just brings about stress for you in any context, especially avoidance. I mean, that's a huge one. Are you avoiding checking the mail? Are you avoiding phone calls, maybe because you are late on bills or you have debt collectors calling you? Do you not open up your bank statements? Do you have anxiety at the thought of checking your balance? Are you having stress as you stand in line hoping your card goes through because you have no clue what's in there? And even on the flip side, Candace, you can look at your bank account and sometimes you're surprised, like, oh, I didn't know I had that much money. Yeah. It's kind of like just wanting to stay and not knowing, because to know is just so overwhelming. So it can show up in ways like that. And also, I think I kind of said this earlier, but behaving in ways as if you don't have sufficient, and maybe that's not relative to your question though, but people can sort of hang on to a broke mindset, even when they're not necessarily in that position. And a lot of times, sometimes this has been an experience of mine actually, where I was claiming broke for so long. Like I had claimed that story that then things started to shift for me. I actually started paying attention. It was really difficult to not still claim that.
Yeah.
And it was impacting me, this kind of crazy making. But, I'm curious as to how many other people might be able to relate to that and might be surprised at how, quote unquote, well they're doing or much better than they believe they're doing. Totally. But they don't really know because they're not looking.
I feel like everything that you just said totally speaks to like different stages of my life.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, when I think about it, I can recall, and even to this day, I have to be really, really cognizant of not going into avoidance when it comes to money. Now, I've had somewhat of a turnaround because the love business is kind of booming a little bit because of this pandemic. And so I still, most of my adult life, I've been really good at just kind of ignoring what was going on. And so when I had in my previous career, my previous life, and I was getting regular checks, first of all, I was living single and didn't have any dependents, and plenty of money to do what I wanted to do, but I was still always crying broke. Like there was never, it was always there. And I did set up to pay bills and stuff like that, but I wanted everything to be on autopilot. I didn't want to have to look at it or think about it or calculate anything. Right? And then forget about it the times, when I started my business and, when I've had difficulties and gone through poor times or, gone through times where money was really tight. I had an eviction a few years ago. Like during those times, the avoidance level was just through the roof, because it's like the complete opposite. But I feel like the hardest part of all of that and, the beliefs that were causing me to do all of those things was like, how do I sort of dig out of it? Like it took a lot for me to even get enough in awareness to know that there, like you said, that there would even be a possibility for digging out of it.
Yeah. It's so difficult because, just across the board, I feel like in general, money is not talked about openly.
Yeah. Because people feel embarrassed. People get shameful, right?
Yeah. Even if it's not necessarily that you're struggling with money, but I think I've had this story growing up, which I think was informed by multiple structures and context in my life that have sort of said, to talk about money is not gross.
Yeah, like rude or...
Like, it's dirty. Like, you just don't do that.
Yeah.
And I remember moving to New York and people saying, how much is your rent? And I'm like,
right?
It's not, it wasn't a thing. It really struck me how openly people talked about just that rent portion, but that says something in terms of like, I'm like, I can't tell you that.
Right.
Or like, even giving myself permission to ask someone like, hey, how much do you pay to live here?
Yeah.
That was like,
like a big deal.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so funny because I had the exact same experience. I moved to New York in 94 and I just couldn't believe how open people were about money because I definitely was raised with that same thing. Like you don't talk about it. It's vulgar. Like with my parents, like we didn't ask them how much money they made or anything like that because that would have been considered disrespectful. They didn't tell us. We didn't know. Like my dad, I think when I was young, he set up a bank account for me and I think he wanted me to learn about it. But I think, and I don't know if it's a generational thing, I'm Generation X, it was very much understood. Me and I have two sisters. It was almost like you're going to marry somebody who's going to take care of all of that. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That, there's a name for it. It's escaping me right now. Sort of that rescue narrative that a lot of people and, women, I think, are taught and sort of take on that, the man is good at money. He'll take care of it. And heterosexual relationships anyway. And that can be modeled from the way that your parents manage money or manage things, too. So you just sort of move on thinking that, hey, this is the norm. This is what it is. I don't need to worry about this.
Right? Daddy makes it, mama spends it.
Yeah. you're bringing that into your adult relationships and dating, and, that avoidance just continues to spill over.
Absolutely.
Where, you're avoiding those conversations or avoiding, really laying out what your debt is or what your financial standing really looks like. And also just what your struggles are. What are your strengths? Like, couples aren't having those conversations as frankly as they need to, but yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Oh, I love that, what you just said, because I think it really does point to, we often on the podcast talk about the vulnerability piece. And so, we were mentioning about the discussion of money, there being embarrassment and shame around it. And, what you were saying about couples don't really talk about our strengths and weaknesses around money. And I can think of relationships that I've been in where I felt like if I admitted what was really going on with my money situation, it would have been being weak, or, I was too ashamed. I didn't want to be vulnerable in that way. And it was such a sign of like how little intimacy there was if I wasn't willing to share that with that person. I felt. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Totally. There's a lot of validity in that, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. For sure. It is. It's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I'm asking couples to step into that. And many times they've been together for a while, and I'm asking questions that they have not asked or have been avoiding.
Wow.
So
yeah. And I think it's great. I think that's exactly why we need to be having this conversation, because not only did we already have this sort of social culture of, money being such a difficulty, but now here we are in the midst of global trauma, right? We're in the midst of like a global situation that's causing everything to come up all at once.
Oh, yeah.
Like how much time we spend together, how we spend our money, if we should even be spending money. Like, I feel like this is touching on just everything that we hold dear.
Yes. Everything that we hold dear, what we value, what our blind spots are. This is, in times of crisis, these things can be highlighted. Yeah. And it provides an opportunity for us to really step back and unpack and face some of these things. Yeah. With a lot of people being home now, not being able to go out, there's time to sit down and have a look at the things that you've been avoiding. I always start with that. This is one question I love to ask Candace clients. They hate me. I say, what do you not want to talk about today?
Yeah.
What do you not? What would you love to not come up? That's what we need
I love
to be
that.
Talking about.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That exact thing you don't want to say. Mm-hmm. I love that. I think that's a great question. So, what are just like some initial steps that you would say if I'm right now, maybe with my partner, maybe I have kids, maybe I don't, but I'm quarantined. Our financial situation is uncertain, and there's probably some past stuff that's going on that we haven't ever worked through. We're not good at having these conversations. What do you think is sort of the first few steps to start taking in order to get to a place where at least it can be talked about?
I would say the beginning piece might be seeking out some sort of tool, resource. That could be in the form of a book, of a podcast, something that is really centered and solely talks about money. You know what? There's actually a podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it, Candace. It's called This Is Uncomfortable.
Ooh.
And it's a money sign. Basically, all the episodes are about money stuff, and people go up there and share their stories, and it's really, really great.
Wow.
I've gotten really into it. So, I think listening to something like that or reading a book, one of my faves is Jen Sincero. She has the You Are Badass at Making Money.
Oh, yeah.
And she really goes in. Have you read that one?
Yes, that's a great book.
She goes in on just like money disorders. I have a bunch of books I could even, recommend that I've read that have been helpful, and just to help them to getting that psychoeducation around money.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it's its own like psychological entity that really has a lot of different pieces. And I think being able to read up on the intricacies of money and our relationship to it can be helpful to resonate, like to say, oh, it's not just me, or this is much deeper than just, not making enough money. And really can be a great way to have some conversations, like to start some of the conversations around money that haven't been had.
Yeah.
Almost with like a third party, so to speak. Just to kind of get that going. Because I think I could kind of go in on some different strategies and you could sit down and do this, but I feel like really diving into the meaning of all of this and seeing where you sort of lay in terms of the narrative that you want to rewrite, that sort of ingesting and digesting any kind of resources that are related to that might be a good start.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you said that, because I really do feel like, and I often talk about this, when people are just having general problems with their relationship, it's almost like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that the first thing to do is kind of turn inward and get clear for yourself so that you can then like communicate with your partner, right?
Yeah. It's identifying those things for yourself and sharing them with your partner.
Yeah.
And just looking at first what's not working for you and why it may not be working for you, gaining some insight and just sort of sitting in that with each other. I think like that's a really vulnerable thing. I say this all the time to my couples, like instead of saying, oh no, don't cry, don't be upset, or oh, you shouldn't feel that way, can you just sit in this with them for a minute?
Yeah.
We don't gotta drown in it, but can you like sit in what your partner is feeling?
Oh, I love
and
that.
sit in that discomfort, because we so quickly want to just like, nope, let me distract, avoid, don't want to feel anything bad.
Yes.
Or, and it's like, sit in that for a minute. That's vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's intimacy.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's intimate, and it's also that thing, it's that exact thing that everybody avoids, and it's the thing that's going to actually have you connect, I feel like.
Yes.
Right? As soon as if I can speak my shame, if I can speak my vulnerability, I can speak what it is that I'm afraid of, and you're just there to accept it and still love me, that's the ultimate in love.
Yeah.
Right? That's that thing that nobody wants to do, but it's exactly what will, bond us together. I have a question for another phrase that you sent me that it really like lit me up. I was like, what is that? Financial infidelity.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just another form of infidelity. I mean, there are so many different types of affairs, romantic, sexual, emotional, internet, cyber, porn, all kinds, right?
Yeah.
So, this is another form of betrayal that there's such a wide range, Candace. I mean, it can be from maybe sort of sitting on what you spend on those shoes you got. It could be
like what we think is like little white lies and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, couple to couple, like everyone has a different idea of what, I guess, crossing that line is or what betrayal looks like. Mm-hmm. But if you're ideally not comfortable just being transparent with what you're spending, what you're making, I mean, it can be lying about your salary, not telling your spouse about a bonus. It can, be as extreme as having a whole family or mistress that you're keeping up in an apartment. Yeah. It could be gambling. It could be lying about how much debt you have or racking it up and not telling your partner. It could be taking half of the money for the rent and you're actually not paying the rent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, essentially it's just like it's not being honest around financial matters. It's something that I've discovered in doing therapy, and my niche has been around betrayal and infidelity, and this is a whole other world that I'm becoming more and more educated on and working with more and more with couples, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, because I feel like now that you explained, it, so I feel like it's so common. Like I think of couples that I know, couples that I've worked with, couples in my family. I think about, I hate to call my mom out, but I think about growing up, how she would shop and hide things in the trunk.
Yeah, mine too.
Right.
Like mine too. Totally. Now, but look, Candace, I wanna make sure, because again, it's like that. Okay, so I'm not going to use my parents as an example, because like if my dad discovered a pair of shoes that my mom like might have hid in my closet, like she used to hide. If she's going to listen to this, she's going to kill me. Right. But she would like hide her stuff in my room to hide it from my dad. Yeah. And say he stumbles upon it, or he's like, "Oh, I thought that was Jelisha's," and it's actually my mom's. It wasn't. It didn't cause like it wasn't a thing. It wasn't like we didn't have food, or that had some sort of ramification, or not even a conflict at all. Just kind of like it was kind of a funny thing. Yeah. But I mean, it's infidelity when it's you are both safe lying about something regarding finances, and going basically you're doing something deceitfully. Yeah. And it's causing like stress, and a lot of times it's causing stress to the person that's doing it. So that's a sign. Yeah. And, I don't think my mom was stressed hiding those shoes, to be honest. It's like a way of which women did. That's what I was taught. Right. Yeah, definitely that generation too. And yeah, I mean, my mom, if you talk to her about it these days, first of all, she'd never admit it. But second of all, I'm sure she would, even if she was admitting it, she would be admitting it with justification. Like there was no, yeah. But here's the thing, I think about that too. I agree with you. Like I think that, there are those small things that probably don't necessarily make or break the relationship. But, as far as what I learned as her daughter, and as far as like the fabric of the family. So, what I learned from my mom, hiding stuff in the trunk and not being forthcoming about what she was doing with financials, was that it's okay to be dishonest in my relationship as long as it's, to my benefit in some way. And and I can think about relationships that I was in. I was in a 13-year relationship, and part of the breakdown was that, he had his things that he didn't do so right or whatever. I mean, he's a great guy. I have nothing bad to say about him. But a big part of the breakdown of our relationship were those little things over the years that I was doing too, that were not kosher, but I felt like, that's how you do when you're in a relationship. You don't have to tell all the truth. Right. But it's also assuming that your partner is going to have an issue with that. Yes. Like if you can afford the shoes, if you're not going over the budget, I think that's what even makes the difference. Yeah. Like let's say you have an agreed budget and you're within the budget and you got some fancy shoes. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I think like asking yourself the why, really makes a big difference. And I mean, I myself assumed when I got into my first serious long-term relationship that he would get mad, or it would be a thing because men don't like you to buy shoes or whatever. And so I was hiding the shoes and he found them and he was like, "Why are you hiding? Why are you hiding?" Like he didn't even care. And I was like, I was like expecting this whole thing. And I'm like, I'm living through the lens of like my childhood. Yeah. Or what, so like that's another thing that can really come from doing this work, is learning the stories that you might be living through from the past that do not relate to now. Yeah. So that brings up a good point, though. So some things they have that harmlessness to them. But then what about things like you had mentioned, something like if someone's telling you that they're paying the rent and they hadn't been. So now there's going to be an eviction or something like that. Or, they're lying about how much money they're making. Do you feel like those kinds of dishonesties are fixable or healable, or are they deal breakers in a relationship? Should you leave? Like, what do you think about that? It's definitely not a simple you should leave or not leave. Yeah. I think it's always better and more preferred if the person can just like own up to it, even if they've already messed up. Like it's better to be told about an affair than to discover it. I mean, they're both pretty awful, but still, right? And painful. It can work if both of you are willing to really put it all out there. And, I think one of the ways that I sort of gauge that with couples when I'm first working with them is asking, like, what's at stake? Because I got to know what's at stake. There's got to be something valuable at stake here for you to be willing to step into that vulnerability and just be completely transparent.
Yeah.
And if there's not enough at stake, if it's just, well, we've been together this long, or, this is just going to be kind of BS.
Yeah.
You're going to be going through the motions,
Yeah.
So if you have something at stake and you can really connect to that, you could have a shot to work through it, but you've got to be willing to really open up.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like if your partner were cheating with somebody else, it's like that willingness to, if we're going to work it out, then I got to also own my shit in it. It can't just be about me blaming you and pointing fingers at you for what you did wrong. I got to also own who I've been in the relationship, right? Ugh.
And both people need to want to know why. Like, that insight piece, is really important. It can't just be, I won't do it again. But don't you want to know why, how you got here, how you know that this won't happen again? It can't just be the person who was betrayed who is on board with that. They both need to be aligned and want that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So what if I'm in a situation where my partner is in control of everything and I want something different. Like, I want it to be different. Maybe they're the ones making the money. They're the ones who control the money. They're the ones who, decide how it goes. And I want to change that around. I want to transform that. What would you suggest for that?
So, assuming, this is coming up for me as you're saying that, we're talking about a situation that is not involving domestic violence or sort of controlling tactics that, occur within an abusive relationship. If we're like, that's aside and that's not in this situation, I would say asking yourself how you are helping, really reflecting on how you've been helping that partner or enabling them to sort of have full control. How do you co-sign that? Because generally we co-sign those behaviors in very subtle ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so kind of like highlighting that and then working from that angle, because I think it's important to take responsibility and really think about your role in this dynamic. If your partner has full control, if you don't know the passwords to accounts, you don't know what's going on with your you don't know anything, you got to step back and really think about that. So I think it's important to enter that conversation with your partner, sort of owning that. So it's not just you need to stop controlling everything. I want to be a part of this, but really laying out the full context and the different pieces and parts that have made this dynamic what it is. And really exploring the different things that you would like to implement to begin to be more involved and in the know. And really, explaining why. Why do you want this? And you need to be connected to that too. Right. It can't just be a surface level, I should. But no, why? Again, what's at stake?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that you said that, because I feel like a lot of, especially for women in particular, I mean, I'm not going to assume that men are the only ones who are in control. There's a lot of women out there who are in control when it comes to finances and things like that. But finding that why, that understanding of, maybe you want to start a business, or maybe you want to, pursue something that you're passionate about. And all of a sudden you realize that there's no leeway for you, right? To spend any money or, if you, with a motivation, I feel like you can almost enroll a partner into anything you want to do if you know why it is you want to do it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And it's got to be meaningful.
It's got to be meaningful.
It's got to be really meaningful. Yeah.
Like getting them on your page and something that means something to you. That totally makes sense. Yeah. Well, one thing that's I feel so important right now, especially, but always, and I know you clearly do because you're a therapist, but this idea of the things that we do to maintain our mental wellness around stuff. So what are some things that you think, for a lot of people who are scared right now, a lot of people who, their income has gone away and, they may or may not be getting this money that's coming from the government or, whatever. There's just a lot of uncertainty. What are some things you would say are important around maintaining mental and financial wellness, emotional financial wellness right now?
I would say the first thing, before even talking about things you can do or should be doing, is what do you need to get rid of? What do you need to limit.
Yeah.
We've got to make space to be able to bring some tools and things in to be helpful to us. And I'm talking about like limiting the social media, or just even limiting what you are consuming.
Yeah.
I was just having this conversation. It's so funny earlier with another colleague of mine, and she was saying that when she's scrolling down her Instagram, she's getting super stressed out, and every post is fear-based and from a fear angle. And I was like, I actually don't relate. I was like, because I don't follow those sort of accounts.
Yeah.
I mean, just in general.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe doing a little cleanse instead of trying to cope with all the stuff that is out there that is very fear-based, perhaps blocking or unfollowing, just like limiting if you are online, and giving yourself boundaries with consuming the news. I mean, I know we need to be like in the know. I'm not saying put your head in the sand, but just really paying attention to what is draining you, what fuels your anxiety, and limiting, if not completely getting rid of that in your space.
Yeah.
What you do have control over, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it's so interesting that you're saying that too about the limiting social media, because I think, at least for me, when I'm not limiting it, I notice that the reason that I'm not is because I have a false sense of being able to control anything. You know what I mean? Like what I can control is not in social media. But if I'm on it, if I'm scrolling my page or whatever, I can convince myself, if I do it in sort of an unconscious way, that if something happens, that there's anything I can do. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think we often convince ourselves of that if we're monitoring it constantly, that we're going to be able to do something about it if there's a problem. When meanwhile, I think like you're saying, it just basically is sucking away from our actual wellness, our actual mental health. Yeah.
I mean, it's taking away from the bandwidth. So, I always think about energy, like in terms of, I think about like money, Candace. I say this a lot, like I'm trying to constantly budget my energy and where I'm going to put it. And is it giving me a return?
Yeah.
Like, is this, the people that I'm even talking to, or who I communicate with, who's in my support network? Like, do I feel expansive after having a conversation with them if I'm having a rough day or a rough time? Or do I feel depleted? Do I feel more anxious? And really paying attention to those different states and where they show up. And really, I think that's the first, like, most important thing. What do you need to clear out? This is the time to declutter.
Right?
Declutter your closet. Seriously, declutter your subscriptions that you're not using that can help you financially. Declutter, just who you're engaging with.
Yeah, like just all the way around. And it's so funny because when you reached out to me, what I loved about wanting to even talk about this is that I think so wholeheartedly that money is just such a symbol of how we do everything else in our life, right? What our relationship is with it. And so I love what you're saying about decluttering and also, focusing on things that bring you back value, because I feel like that is true of every area. Like even in, how you live in your house, how you are with your partner, how you are with your friends. It's like, and like you said, this quarantine time, I mean, if we don't take advantage of, and I don't mean this to sound like, a voice of doom, but if we don't take advantage of this time to have all of those things, replace them to where we might want them to be, or at least be working towards that. And then this time goes by, which that's the hope, right? That, we're going to go back to at least some semblance of health and normalcy where we're not worried about people dying. Then it just is a missed opportunity. Like time you can't get back, money you can always make. Right. But this time is like invaluable. Like we're never going to get this back, where you don't have to be on the hustle and the grind, where you don't have to be taking up most of your day on the train. You can actually look your kids in the eye which I know a lot of parents are sick of that right now, but like your family's around you, like this is a very, very valuable time for really being part of a big shift.
Totally. And I think on that thread, Candace, I mean, just gratitude, like looking within this context of what things are you getting more of, like whether it be I get to take my kid to school. I mean, not take my kid wake them up in the morning, because I'm thinking about a friend who was saying, like, she hasn't been able to be there when her kid wakes up because she goes to work so early. So, you know, just like, what are the things that you're grateful for that maybe you haven't been able to indulge in?
Yeah.
You know, what's the one thing that couples are always saying? We don't have enough time, Jelisha. There's not enough time. We don't have time for...
Yeah.
We got time now.
We got time. We got nothing but time. Right? If you're not a healthcare worker or somebody who just like constantly works from home, you got nothing but time.
Yeah.
You know? It's true. It's true. I love this conversation though, because, you know, I always say that with all of this stuff, it is the willingness to practice. Like there's no, you know, we're not light switches where all of a sudden, you know, we start just doing things better. But I think that it's having these conversations that helps people, you know, at least helps me to consider how I can just start doing little small things.
Yes.
You know, to make a difference.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, so like the eating and the Netflix thing, I think, you know, we all can fall prey to that. And, you know, I can go down a YouTube rabbit hole in a second and hours could go by, or I could be on TikTok forever. And I do think there's something to be said for, you know, entertaining ourselves and sharing that with each other and keeping each other's spirits up and keeping them light during this time. But, you know, I don't know. I think it can't be stressed enough that this is a great time to be having these financial conversations. These like,
it really is. It really is.
It's good stuff.
And not being afraid to, you know, reach out at this time to support groups. You know, like I said earlier, in terms of just what you're ingesting and what you're consuming via the internet, books, what have you. Like it's a great time to dig in and start to really unpack some of this.
Yeah.
You know, therapists. I mean, obviously now everyone's going virtual, so you know that's an option if you can sort of find a corner where you can have some privacy in your house.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know this. It's something that I just discovered like 2 years ago. There are financial therapists, like therapists who literally work with people to unpack their money baggage.
Wow.
And I was absolutely fascinated by this. And so I mean, just like putting that out there to any listeners who might want to look into that, whether that be now or when things settle down, that, you know, there are people that like are all about this, who are skilled to help you with mental health around money and also strategy too. Like they're trained in that as well. That's
fantastic.
You don't have to do this on your own. That's basically you don't have to do this on your own. And we really don't do anything, I think, as far as growth goes, on our own, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say we try to, you know, if you stay in your own head, it's like you're staying in a bad neighborhood, like the bad neighborhood of your own. Like if you want to grow, it definitely requires community and support and expertise and all of that stuff. So speaking of that, Jelisha, let everybody know where they can find you, because I know that you're an amazing family therapist and, you know, that you're someone who's great to work with, and you're doing virtual sessions, right?
Yeah, it's all virtual. I've been virtual for a while.
Okay.
Not full-time, but full-time now.
Right.
So yeah, I'm doing virtual sessions. I practice, you can find me at Let's Unpack Therapy. Just think about unpacking your baggage. Let's Unpack Therapy. I'm on Instagram at Let's Unpack Therapy, on Facebook, Let's Unpack Therapy, let'sunpacktherapy.com.
Awesome.
Hoping that's like pretty easy.
Yeah.
And you can set up a free consultation. I do 15 minutes phone or video if you want to get a taste of what that feels like. If you're a little hesitant, I really encourage people to do that so you can get a sense of what it really feels like. And it feels a little bit more intimate than a phone call.
Yeah.
So, if you go to the website, you guys can set that up if you're curious or interested about working with me or have questions about therapy in general. That's pretty much it, Candace.
That's awesome. Oh, and then you mentioned about the 3 tips for money anxiety that you have.
Oh, yes. I have a guide that I created that has 3 tips to start to manage anxiety. And this is really just about managing the anxiety that a lot of people have around money in general, or if it's feeling like it's been escalated within the pandemic, it'd be an awesome thing to look at, and it gives you some concrete steps of things that you can start to do today, right now, actionable, realistic steps that you can do to start to better manage your anxiety and start to gain some clarity and insight to help you on your journey of having a positive money mindset.
Yes.
Candace, I don't know, I guess I can give you the link.
Yeah.
That they can click on to get that. And
if you send me that link, which I think you might have already sent it to me, I'm going to just add it onto, when I'm posting on social media, and, the Armed Radio people, they'll see it in the group, and it'll be all over, when I post it. I'll make sure to add it in that they can get it.
Awesome. Yeah. So,
and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to stop kicking myself for not investing in toilet paper and weed like I initially.
I love it so much.
Right?
Love it so much. Oh my goodness.
But yeah,
thank you.
I will make sure to share that around because I think a lot of us need it out here. Jelisha, thank you so much, my sweet love. I'm so glad that we finally did this.
No, me too. It's been long overdue. No, I'm thrilled to have been on the show and talking about money. I love it. Love it so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And you're like one of my OGs, because remember, you used to come on when we were at the V Club. We'd have a big group of ladies.
Yeah. And that's where I just met you randomly.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to know more of her. I need to see this woman.
I
just
loved
your energy. It was so infectious. Yeah. So I'm super pumped. I'm really excited. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for all of the wisdom nuggets. And I know that there's people out there who are just really going to find it so very valuable. So thank you for doing what you do and delivering your message and just being, a loving agent for change in the world.
Thanks, Candace.
Yes.
Take care.
All right, my sweetheart. Stay healthy, and I'll talk to you very soon. You're a friend of the show now, so you're going to come back on at some point.
I hope so.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. So that was fantastic talking to Jelisha. Oh my goodness. You guys have to tell me, those of you who listen to the show, if you want me to have guests more often, I'm happy to do that. I mean, I used to have guests, and, it's something that I do enjoy having a nice conversation, but I also enjoy just talking. You guys know how I am. And just so you know, for anybody who has not listened to the show before, I am a matchmaker for Talkify. If you want to be included in my roster of recruits to be matched with one of my fantastic clients for free, send me a private message on Facebook with your interest, or you can email me, askforcandypodcast@gmail.com, and I'll send you my recruitment link and get you screened and, see if I have somebody I can match you up with. I'm definitely always looking for eligible bachelors who, are ready for love and have it all together. And all you really have to do is be single, open to being screened, and, in touch with who you are, have a verb for life, just, ready to have some fun. Right now we're doing all digital dating, all virtual dating. I'm even doing it myself. I'm a big advocate of it. I feel like, it's not the same as being face-to-face in person, but you really can get to know a person before you commit too much, before you spend all your money, before you shave your hoo-ha, before you do all of that stuff that you might normally do, before in early dates. I don't know if you shave your hoo-ha in early dates. I can't make those judgments. But sometimes people do. They want to be fresh. You don't have to do any of that stuff with digital dating. You just get on a digital date. You only have to look good from the waist up and just be yourself and enjoy yourself. The other thing that I'm doing right now, especially during this global health crisis, is the Epic Circle, which is an online healing circle for women everywhere. So every Monday night, we as women, we come together as a community and we cause personal transformation when it comes to communication, forgiveness, self-love, mother-daughter relationships, purpose, friendships, just all of the tools that we need to be as big as we were meant to be. So last week we started with a conversation about sisterhood and what it means to be, what it really means at home and in the world. Actually, the conversation about sisterhood was our first our first sort of session, our first circle. And then that sort of evolved into like who I am in a sisterhood. And then that evolved into what are my patterns and what are my workable patterns compared to my non-workable patterns. And then this week coming up, we're going to be talking about how do I love myself? How do I know I love myself? And what are the signs that really show me that I love myself? That's what this upcoming session is all about. And it's all related to what we're dealing with right now. It's all about maintaining your mental wellness, your mental health. It's all about growth and transformation and being part of what is the great shift that's going on now. And that's that. You guys know you can follow me on Instagram at Ask for Candy Podcast and at Candy Love Coach. And that's it. Also, shout out to the Ask for Candy podcast group and the Armed Radio group. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ask for Candy Podcast, to catch any episodes that you may have missed. Subscribe. Say that 5 times fast on Anchor. Ask for Candy on Anchor, because that way you're supporting me. Email me, askforcandypodcast@gmail.com, and send me your questions and comments. They may even become topics on future shows. Next week's topic is smart, savvy, and self-sufficient, what modern day women have to be willing to give up if they ever want to have a healthy relationship with a man. Woo! That's going to be an interesting topic. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Until next time, never forget that you are a love machine. If you ever start to feel like you aren't getting the love you need, just make more and then ask for candy. I love you. Bye now. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
I call my sugar